This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Today is chapter 35, Caemlyn, and her symbol's the lion, which is just Caemlyn's symbol.
The Lion of Andor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the whole country, really. Sort of, and it's the Camelot, right? Caemlyn, Camelot.
Yeah, it's a pretty obvious reference.
Right.
Plus the lion and all. I don't know, I feel like it's a very England-y thing.
Especially in the audiobooks, these characters are all played like with a British accent.
Are they? I mean, it's perfect for Elaine.
Especially when she gets like really snooty and all like, I'm a queen and you better do what I say.
She's getting the veil stuck in her nose.
The voice actors give her like this really heavy British accent. And when she hangs out like with her brother, like Gawain, they both get these like very hoity-toity, aristocratic. It's perfect for the family.
First couple of things I have like the first paragraph, but this is just Rand's descriptions of Caemlyn. I'll start reading this and we'll get into the groove here. Rand twisted up to kneel behind the driver's seat. He could not help laughing with relief. "We made it, Matt. I told you we'd..." Words died in his mouth as his eyes fell on Caemlyn. After Merrilin, even more after the ruins of Shadar Logoth, he had thought he knew what a great city would look like, but this was more than he would have believed.
I mean, they're coming up on basically the greatest city in the world. It's going to blow away anything they've seen before.
Totally. And at least compares to any of the other great cities.
And I'd say maybe even some modern cities.
Probably. Do we ever get like a good estimate for the amount of people? Probably not. And he goes on to describe like the 50-foot stone walls and the guard towers that are even higher on top of the walls.
And this is all Ogier built.
Yeah. Or the inner city. I guess, are the walls Ogier built?
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the inner city. Saw that coming. Neighbor comes home right about this time.
Oh, yeah. I guess this happens every week, doesn't it?
All of the inner city is Ogier made, including the walls. And then the outer city is human made around it.
The sheer 50-foot height of pale gray stone, streaked with silver and white, swept out in a great circle, curving to the north and south till he wondered how far it must run. All along its length towers rose, round and standing high above the wall's own height, red and white banners whipping in the wind, atop each one. From inside the wall, other towers peeked out, slender towers, even taller than those at the walls, and domes gleaming white and gold in the sun. That sounds like Ogier stuff.
Yeah. Is that outer city or inner city?
This is Rand approaching the city. So, I mean, he's going to see the tallest structures, which includes the wall, of course.
Right.
And he seems to be saying that he can't see the end of the wall in either direction.
It's a big city.
It's huge.
And that's why I think it may compare to some modern day cities. It's big enough that you can't stand up on a hill and see the whole thing.
He also, as he's walking through, describes like people who look like he's never seen before, like dark-skinned people, and people. He describes all these various outfits that we recognize, sort of in International City, you know.
See if we can identify all the different cities and towns they come from.
I'm sure we can. We see Matt getting annoyed. I have on the next page. He says, "How are we going to hide in this? How can we tell who to trust with so many, so bloody many, and all the noise?" And, you know, all this is just like what it feels like when you've never been to a big city before.
Sure, but there's also that just crazy paranoia going on from the dagger.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's a combination of the two, that he's just having this massive panic attack.
Right. And Rand just counters saying, "How can they find us among so many? Can't you see it, you wool-headed idiot? We're safe. If you ever learn to watch your bloody tongue," which he doesn't.
No. He starts talking about a fade, and whenever Rand brings up the rest of the crew, he's always like, they're dead. They're as dead as the Gleeman. You know, he's just given up all hope at this point.
Yeah, he's in a really dark place.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious.
And that dagger has really taken a hold of him and dug its roots in deep.
Yeah.
Because he pretty much, once they get to the once they get to the
Queen's Blessing.
The Queen's Blessing, Thank you. He just goes right to bed, and we don't see him again until Moraine heals him.
Yeah.
I mean, he's pretty much, we see him, but he's just in bed, like, tossing and turning for, like, a couple days, I think. And so they're joining these massive crowds that are coming in to see Loghain.
Yeah.
And that's sort of their cover, is that they're sort of blending in with all the traveling people who, it's like a big festival.
There's tons of country boys in rumpled, dusty clothes, and they're just going to blend right in.
I couldn't help but think of the eclipse that we went, like, it's an event that doesn't happen very often, like the Dragon Reborn.
All the Portlanders are grumbling, like, why are all these people in my city?
Exactly.
There's more traffic than usual. And
exactly.
I definitely heard a bunch of that.
But then, there's just a bunch of people traveling, and they all pretty much assume, hey, you're going to see Loghain. Yeah, we're going to see the eclipse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you just sort of wave at everybody because you're all going to the same direction to see the same thing. So it's a dynamic that I feel like we experienced very recently.
I also noted as the farmer's dropping them off here, they're jumping off the cart, the farmer says basically, and we saw this guy in the last chapter.
Bunt.
Yeah. And he says something like, what you're hiding under your cloak, is it really what Holdwyn says? And Rand's trying to play it off. What do you mean? Keeping his voice steady. Bunt avoided looking at Matt, as if he knew there was a weapon hidden in that hand. Matt's like clutching the dagger, of course. Don't mean nothing, I suppose. Look now. If you heard I was coming to Caemlyn, you were there long enough to hear the rest. Was I after a reward, I'd have made some excuse to go into the Goose and Crown, speak to Holdwyn. Only, I don't much like Holdwyn, and I don't like that friend of his. Not at all. Seems like he wants you two more than he wants anything. I don't know what he wants, Rand says, trying to play it cool. And the farmer says, uh-huh. Well, like I say, I don't know nothing, and I guess I don't want to. There's enough trouble around for everybody without me looking for more. I'm skipping a little. I'd hide that. The old farmer paused and looked around warily. Stop wearing, he said. Hide it. Sell it. Give it away. That's my advice. Thing like that's going to draw attention, and I guess you don't want any of that.
So he's basically referencing the conversation he had at the end of the last chapter.
Yeah, and what they all overheard, the conversation that I think it was an innkeeper named Holdwyn has with a Myrddraal. But you don't know that it's a Myrddraal, but...
Yeah, we know it's a Myrddraal.
Yeah, the shady, hooded guy that strikes fear into the heart of everyone around him, saying these two boys, one's carrying a heron-marked sword. And
so Bunt knows, listen, they know about the heron-marked sword. Cover it up. Get rid of it. That's what they're tracking you with. Mm-hmm. It attracts too much attention.
And he's also like, I know you have it. I just don't care. And I don't like either of those people, so I'm not going to help them.
Exactly. They're evil and they're bad. I don't like them very much. You seem like decent boys.
I think he just has a general sense of like not wanting to deal with them and not caring for the reward.
There's a quote right before that I kind of liked where he was talking about the people and... just how they're denying the climate change that's going on around them.
Oh, yeah.
They did not see, Rand realized, could not or would not. Their eyes slid away from the leafless branches, and they walked across the dead and dying grass without once looking down. What they did not see, they could ignore. What they did not see was not really there.
I really liked that very last line. What they did not see, it was not really there.
So good. Yeah. Just ignoring what's going on around you. It's very easy to do.
Just like real life.
Yeah. There's so many great climate change analogies in this book.
Yeah, especially with the super abrupt climate change that's happening.
Oh, man. I mean, everything's on fire around us.
Yeah.
We've been breathing crazy amounts of smoke just by going outside. Super unhealthy.
A couple of days ago, managed to fall asleep really early, which is rare for me, and I woke up really early, like before my alarm, and I was like, great, I'm like awake and chipper. I already listened to the news. Like, I'm going to go for a run. That's like my favorite thing to do when I can get up early enough to do it. And I go for a run, and I came home, and I was like wheezing, and I was like, that's weird. Like, usually I feel better after I run, and I was like, why do I feel like it's like hard to breathe? And then I like flipped on OPB, which is our like local
NPR station.
Yeah. And they were talking about, they were like, don't go outside and exercise. Like, don't, and I was like, oh, geez. Okay.
You just smoked an extra pack today.
Today was a big improvement on the 2 days before that.
It was.
It wasn't raining ashes visibly, which was a really big improvement. And that's, it's just apocalyptic.
It is. I mean, it's just, it's hard not to draw the parallels as you've got. As we're walking in, like, Ravine's about to, jump in as Gabriel to Caemlyn. I guess that's not this scene, but that happens soon.
Yeah. And the next thing I have is Rand saying, Thom said to find an inn called the Queen's Blessing. We'll go there first. Just Rand remembers that and decides to try to find it.
This is a place where they could sell the ruby. I know that was sort of something they couldn't do before, or sell the sword.
Yeah.
But I guess they don't really need it because they don't really need the money now because they're not trying to get to Caemlyn anymore.
They suddenly have allies accidentally, pretty much.
Well, friends of Thom's.
Yeah.
Thom, it's definitely, they're there with Basil Gill is Thom's friend. I think he owes him from way back when. Matt is still just super negative. He's like, he just basically stops in the middle of the street and gives up for a minute.
Is this where he says, light the two rivers is so far away, it might as well be on the other side of the world. He says, we're alone and we'll never get home. We're going to die, Rand. Literally says that.
Wherever we go, they're right behind us or they're waiting for us. They'll be at the Queen's Blessing too. I can't. Nothing's going to stop a fade. I mean, they're finally reaching a little bit of safety, getting some allies, and he is just spiraling down the deep end.
Yeah. It's sad to watch. And we see as they're walking through the streets the tense politics. Rand asks a random stranger. He says a man that looks sort of like Perrin. He stops him on the street and asks about the Queen's Blessing. And the man says, the Queen's Blessing, huh? You country boys Queen's men? He wore a white cockade and a wide-brimmed hat and a white armband on his long coat. And we know what that means. That means he's political faction that is, should I say, against the Queen? Or I guess anti-Aes Sedai.
Sure.
And because Morgase is connected to Aes Sedai, she's kind of falling out of favor with this political faction.
Right. She went to the White Tower as an apprentice, and she has a very visible Aes Sedai advisor. A lot of rulers have them, but a lot of them don't make it visible.
I don't know if it's mentioned in this chapter, but she is about to send her son and daughter to train in Tar Valon. Mm-hmm. I think it is mentioned somewhere in here.
And they're going off with Logain.
Yeah.
As he goes through. There's a whole group of them. So here's my theory. Either Ishmael or possibly Ravine are in the city causing chaos. This all starts when a couple of Queen's guards get a little overenthusiastic and beat up people who are bad-mouthing the Aes Sedai.
We see Master Gill talk about that later.
Right. Now, it's possible Ravine isn't out yet, and it's possible it's Ishmael. But they both like to use a little compulsion, and so it wouldn't be that hard to use a little compulsion on the guards to cause them to start the fight.
To get them to be a little extra upset, where they might have just been annoyed before.
Exactly. And one of the things that happens is one of the ways Gabriel becomes Ravine. Mm-hmm. The idea is that he is in there and he's maybe fermenting chaos so that he can rise up and save the day, because he comes to her notice when he basically rises up in the chaos in a faction that's supporting the Queen.
Gotcha.
And that's how he becomes to her attention. And then once he has her, he uses compulsion on her. So this sort of discontent that's happening right now leads directly to the rise of Ravine. So I think there's a good possibility he's actually in the city now.
Sowing discord. I have a little description here about I suppose I'll read this. It's really relevant here. Rand notices white cloaks are also in the city. He notices the small riot, people fighting and shouting at each other and arguing in the streets. And then he notes as they're walking through, away from the riot, all the Caemlyn men, though, and some of the strangers, had their swords wound in strips of cloth, sheath and hilt, red bound with white cord or white bound with red. 100 heron-marked swords could be hidden under those wrappings, and no one would see. Besides, following local fashion would help them seem to fit in more. And he just thinks it's a fashion. He doesn't know what's going on.
And that's basically how people are indicating which side of the argument they're on.
Red for the Queen. I interpreted it as like the blood of the blood of the monarch.
They're both red and white. It's just whether the cloth is red and the string is white, or the other way around.
Right.
So I get them confused all the time. I forget which one's which. But basically, Rand walks in and buys the Queen's cloth, which is the red, because it's cheaper.
Yeah. A good many shops were fronted with tables displaying the cloth in court, and Rand stopped at one. The red cloth was cheaper than the white, though he could see no difference apart from the color, which I think is because it's the less popular faction.
Right.
So they're just charging more because more people are buying the white, so they're charging more for it.
Well, they have a bunch of extra red on hand.
I also noticed that the tight-lipped shopkeeper eyed them up and down with a twist to his mouth while he took Rand's coppers and cursed them when Rand asked for a place inside to wrap his swords.
Which is funny. He's selling both red and white cloth, but cursing out anyone who buys the red cloth.
Yeah.
That's a little weird. But Rand keeps trying to like pacify people by like praising the Queen, and it's
he says that to the shopkeeper. He says, and he's like backing away, and he says, "The light illumine, good Queen Morgase." Rand said, "Hopefully." "You make any trouble," the man said sourly, "and there's 100 men in sound of my voice will take care of you, even if the guards won't." He paused to spit, just missing Rand's foot. "Get on about your filthy business." Rand nodded as if the man had bid him a cheerful farewell and pulled Matt away. Like that scene. They're just like totally clueless.
Yeah, they have no idea what's going on around them.
Yeah.
They're deep into the politics. And
this is kind of reminds me of, what is it? It's Caemlyn. Yeah, it's Caemlyn. When Rand's just like, "This is stupid," and he throws the letters in the fire, and it makes him popular. It's like, "I'm not playing your dumb game." You're like, "Oh, he says he's not playing the game."
Only really skilled players don't even play the game.
Yeah.
And I think this is a bit of Teviran luck too.
Probably. Yeah.
Like he's got to have the pro-Queen stuff on his hilt.
Yeah.
For events. I think that when he falls into the garden, that's an important little plot point. And I don't think Master Gill would have supported him if he didn't have the right wrapping.
Yeah, he wouldn't have liked that.
Because we know Master Gill's a good Queen's man. I mean, he goes with Queen Morgase later.
Yeah, he doesn't say specifically, but at some point, Gill says, "And you boys seem like the right sort."
Yeah.
And it's just a nondescript. It doesn't go any further into it, but I interpreted that as Gill saying like, "And, well, you were on the same side politically, so that's nice."
Oh, that's not how I interpreted it.
Oh, I mean it. Yeah.
Because I interpret it as him, because he's talking about Thom, and he's like, "I guess you are the right kind of boys that Thom would help." And I think he's saying you're the right sort, as in you're young boys who can probably channel.
Yeah.
So I think Master Gill realizes that just because they're the right age, they're young boys, Thom would be there to help them out.
A little before that, I have, when they finally find the inn, one of the first things Rand notices is the innkeeper was fat. He was pleased to see. I'm just going to make a point of noting this every time.
Oh, yeah. Well, and he's still got the skinny innkeeper in his memory. We just encountered.
Sure, that was like last week.
Yeah.
So
like just a couple of rides before. That was the last inn they stayed at.
Yeah.
He blew it up with a lightning. Basil Gill. I like him. He says some pretty wise stuff. I like this when he's talking about Thom, and he says, "Is he dead?" And Rand's like, "Well, as good as we saw him, And Basil Gill's like, "I'll believe he's dead," the innkeeper said slowly, "when I see his corpse." Because Thom is not an easy guy to kill.
Rand does say, "Tom's dead, Master Gill. If he was your friend, I'm sorry. He was mine too." Gill sort of asked for, like, well, what happened? He said, well, they got into this fight, and he's like almost definitely died in it. And Gill says, "I'll believe he's dead when I see his body."
And I think that's a little bit of Jordan also, wink, nod. You probably shouldn't think this character's dead until you see his body. Like,
yeah,
that's something that definitely, and these books were also written
so.
at a time when your main characters didn't die 100 pages and 300 pages into the first book.
Sure. This is not a Song of Ice and
Fire. No. There's definitely some plot armor going on. These they'll be fine. He'll be fine. He's just recovering a little bit.
And Gill also says, "I believe you saw whatever it was you saw. I just don't believe he's dead." He's a harder man to kill than you might believe, is old Thom Merrilin.
Coming to Caemlyn, you say? That's the last place on Earth that I expect Thom to come, excepting maybe it was Tarvalin.
which is the goal.
Well, because Thom can't come to Caemlyn because he's got a price on his head.
Legally.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, technically.
Not even technically. I mean, Gareth Bryn would take his head off so fast.
Yeah, and we see Gill talk about that a little. In a minute, we see Gill say that and Gareth Bryn, or something like, and Gareth Bryn was none too pleased to know that, like, when Morgase said, like, go get it, like, I bring him back. And Thom goes back to the palace, has like crosswords with Morgase, and leaves again. And before Bryn comes back to report that he hasn't found him, he says basically,
he like snuck in behind his. Snuck in behind his back. By the way, Gareth Bryn sounds like something you put a turkey in. I think it's
Gareth Bryn.
Gareth Bryn.
Yeah. I mean, I did say Bryn all this time. There is an E at the end.
There is. It's definitely spelled like Bryn, but...
Are we going with Bryn?
I think Bryn's right.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm just going to you're going to make me hungry. Like, you think about like brining a turkey every time you say that name.
Yeah. My restaurant, they make homemade pickles for the like skewers that just go on cocktails. And like one of my jobs at the bar is to I just make those skewers at the end of the day, just hundreds of them. I like make a skewer, eat a pickle. Make a skewer, eat a pickle.
It's a lot of Gareth Bryn you're taking down.
Salty. Bryn's pretty salty. Bryn's pretty salty.
Salty old man. So yeah, you said you had some stuff before that.
I mean, yeah, all the stuff I have here is, so here I have Matt snorted. For all I care, the Ravens can take every Aes Sedai straight to Shale Ghul. Watch your tongue, Master Gill snapped. I said I don't love them. I don't say I'm a fool who thinks they're behind everything that's wrong. The Queen supports Elaida, and the guards stand for the Queen. The Lights End things don't go so bad that changes. Anyway, lately some of the guards have forgotten themselves enough to be a little rough with the folks they overhear speaking against Aes Sedai. Not on duty, thank the light, but it's happened just the same. I don't need off-duty guards breaking up my common room to teach you a lesson, and I don't need white cloaks egging somebody on to paint the dragon's fang on my door. So if you want any help out of me, you just keep your thoughts about Aes Sedai to yourself, good or bad. Maybe it's best you don't mention Thom's name either, where anyone but me can hear. Some of the guards have long memories, and so does the Queen. No need taking chances. Thom had trouble with the Queen? Rand said incredulously. So he didn't tell you everything.
And that's where he starts the story of what happened to Thom. And
yeah, he kind of breaks it down for them. Tells them a little bit about what's going on.
Do we want to kind of recap that?
Gill says that Thom wasn't always a gleeman. He was a court bard right here in Caemlyn, and known in every royal court from Tyr to Meridon, which is a enormous claim. That's the whole continent.
And he's known in every royal court. I mean,
he really is.
It makes me think again that Moiraine knows him.
Oh yeah, she's got to.
She has to, because she, as a noble woman in Cairhien,
I mean, that was
she must have.
Geez, was that chapter 2 or something?
Yeah,
that we had came to that conclusion, or I came to that conclusion, really for the first time, where the Game of Houses is kind of happening right there, where Rand and Thom are talking when they see each other in the Two Rivers, and she's giving these masked threats like.
Oh, you mean when
you don't know who I am?
Thom and Moiraine,
know who you are. Yeah.
When they're having the subtext conversation, underneath everybody else. Yeah. And I think that's great. I think that's the Gleeman, actually.
And Rand's like, she must not have liked his story.
That was one of our popular episodes.
So he becomes close to Morgase, and Gill says, there were some said Thom was, shall we say, closer to the Queen than was proper. But Morgase was a young widow, and Thom was in his prime then, and the Queen can do as she wishes, which is, I think, kind of a known thing in Andor. It's not terribly uncommon for a queen to have a consort, like a boyfriend, basically.
It's possible that Thom may have orchestrated the death of
It was someone trying to kill Morgase. I forget the name of the man. But he did. He assassinated the guy.
Taringail, Domindred.
That's right.
The nephew of Laman.
That's right.
And the father of Gawain and Elaine.
Well, turned up dead. It's heavily implied that Thom assassinated him. I don't think anyone can prove it.
Yeah, it was a hunting accident.
Oh, was it?
It was, yeah.
Right. A hunting accident.
I think that he basically set up Taringail to die in the hunting accident, immediately fled to take care of his nephew, and when he came back, he and Morgase got into it about the assassination.
That's probably what actually happened. The story that Gill tells here is not that story, but I wouldn't expect that anyone would know that story except, save, a handful of people who are close to the court. And it's not the sort of thing you would say out loud.
It sort of got me thinking this sentence right here, where Basil Gill said, "It was not long after Taringail Domindred died that the trouble about his nephew cropped up."
Maybe Gill does know. And I mean, he does seem like a wise enough man to not say that out loud.
I mean, I think he just recognizes the timing. I don't necessarily think that...
He was friends with Thom.
But I see Basil Gill as not believing that Thom is an assassin. But Thom is definitely an assassin.
Yeah.
And he assassinated the king.
And a good one.
I guess he wasn't the king. He was the queen's consort. What was his title?
And I mean, Taringail would also have been like a few in line from the Caemlyn throne, which puts him pretty high up there.
Yeah, and that's how Elaine ends up claiming the Caemlyn throne, is through her father.
Nephew of Laman, half-brother of Moraine.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's all a big tangled family tree back there.
Yeah, it's confusing.
This guy was kind of a key connection.
Gill also says Elida was set against him, meaning Thom, because of his trying to mix in with the business of his nephew, and between the queen's temper and Elida's animosity, Thom left Caemlyn half a step ahead of a trip to prison, if not the headsman's axe. As far as I know, the writ still stands. If it was a long time ago, Rand said, maybe nobody remembers. Master Gill shook his head. Gareth Bryan is Captain General of the Queen's Guards. He personally commanded the guardsmen Morgase sent to bring Thom back in chains, and I misdoubt he'll ever forget returning empty-handed to find Thom had already been back to the palace and left again, and the Queen never forgets anything. You ever know a woman who did? My, but Morgase was in a taking. I'll swear, the whole city walked soft and whispered for a month. Plenty of other guardsmen old enough to remember, too. No, best you keep Thom as close a secret as you keep that Aes Sedai of yours. Come, I'll get you something to eat. You look as if your bellies are gnawing at your backbones. It's the last paragraph of that chapter.
Yeah, it always bothered me that they just, she wanted to have his head for a lover's spat. I never got that, but it makes a lot more sense if he had killed her husband.
Yeah, and an important member of the Caemlyn noble family.
Right.
This is a huge political... And I think, if anything, the fact that he disappeared right after the death of Taringail makes him look like a suspect. That looks bad. Mm-hmm. There were rumors that he was involved with Morgase, and she was supposed to be involved with going to have this potential political marriage, but she's involved with this other guy, and then the one dude dies, and the other guy disappears, and it's just very obvious looking. I'm sure Thom didn't plan it that way. He just found out that he needed to be somewhere.
Right. And he didn't get there in time because he was probably setting up this assassination.
Yeah.
That's where I think some of his guilt comes from, is that instead of being there to help out his nephew, he was killing a king.
Right.
And to make up for that, he's been trying to help the boys. Didn't make the connection till now. That's a new one for me.
Oh, of how it looked.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably more of why Morgase would be upset, because of how it looked, than what actually happened.
Maybe, yeah. That it looked like he killed him.
Yeah, that it looks bad. It makes her look bad. You can't host a noble from another land and just have him die.
Well, he's not from... That was her husband at the time.
Oh, I didn't realize they were married.
Yeah. Yeah, that was her husband, father of... And he'd already had a kid with Tigraine, who was... Galad. Sorry. Space on the name. Yeah.
Rand is Tigraine's son.
Is Tigraine's son. Galad is Tigraine's son. So they...
Right.
share a mother. And then Galad shares a father with, Elaine and Gawain. They're all related through marriage, basically.
Yeah.
And they're all half-siblings.
Rand is only related to Elaine through marriage.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, no, yeah, real complex family. And then and not only is it a complex family, but like Thom killed one of them, and now he's like helping out the rest, and it's very killed Elaine's father, and now acts like her father.
It's a really confusing mess that I never really understood until pretty recently.
Mm-hmm.
I knew they were all kind of, sort of related and part of these royal families, but I didn't. It took me forever to realize that Rand and Elaine would be related through marriage, not by blood, but through marriage.
Right. Yeah, and they share a half brother.
Yeah. They have the same brother, or half brother, but
yeah, they have the same half brother, just different halves.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?